Censor and contextualize ourselves right now. Start by saying too that truly anonymous spaces online. I think it's deeply like an integral part of our like or it needs to be an integral part of our understanding of digital environments. It's like the time and place for anonymity exists and is important. And you saw literacy like rise extremely thanks to Reddit. I think about Reddit all the time. I'm like, wow, what they did there. That like it doesn't matter. You know, like the impact it had on the people was just so intense, and that's what I see every time with movements. There's this really great social movement video about the first follower, and it's just like the dancing guy. I don't know, search dancing guy and first follower. You'll have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is gonna be a rough episode. I'm gonna preface this that there's content warning here for rape and sexual and racial violence and pedophilia, mentioning and discussing pedophilia as a concept and as a public health crisis, as a societal issue that needs to be addressed as though it is a public health crisis, and also within the greater context of systemic injustice. So this is going to be a super intense episode. Oh my god, this is just, it doesn't want to do it. Whew, okay. My hands, they've been okay. They've been good. They're just cold and I'm nervous, so here we are. We're gonna do some pretty wild stuff, but I think it will ultimately have, hopefully, a positive impact to kind of speak these things out loud, be able to bring them into the light a little bit and illuminate what they can teach us and tell us about kind of just the demons in the room, you know, and that just helps us banish demons. Like that's how this works. So yeah, without further ado, I had to get some like party lights going on for later because that's part of the visual field for me. It needs to be like, ooh, pretty the shiny things. Yes. Okay, the snail can have... Yeah, the snail's having a great time. And we got the hand pan here. Do we have one for the hand pan? I love these. I always get them from the dollar store whenever I go to the dollar store, or like if I see them at Target in the dollar aisle, I will like snag one if I have an extra dollar. Not like every time, but enough to keep like one on hand usually, kind of. I don't know. They just show up. You know, the world is a magical place. I don't even really know what I'm saying. I'm just trying to talk my jitters out.
It's true.
Is this like supposed to be purple? I think it's supposed to be purple and it's just like not showing up super well. I wonder if Taz would have a better chance. Oh yeah, that works. It's like a little halo. I put them on the slug, by the way. Yeah, so this is a heavy episode, but I think what it tells us about some of the like headspaces that people are or have been in. Yeah, no, I think I'm done prefacing, and I might even be done building lights.
My anxiety overcame me at a Paris.
Oh yeah, this was the halo for the... Oh my god, so cute. I need googly eyes. My mom sent me like 3 boxes of googly eyes. Just and I have like a million drinks planned for
Chocolate chip cookies, they were amazing. I ate 6 and passed out on the couch.
take that as a sign from God to take a minute and like more deeply process the things you want to highlight about this, because this is a lot. So, you know, let's think really carefully about what it is we're trying to say, and then let's think about how we're saying it. And I did all that.
I tried. Did my best.
super intense episode. Ooh, okay.
I gotta get ready to mute.
They're just cold and nervous, so here we are. We're gonna do some pretty wild stuff, but I think it will ultimately have some setting. Speak these things out loud, be able to bring them to light a little bit and illuminate, just like him teach us and tell us about. All right, well, let's take that inside. Yeah, just the demons in the room, you know, and that just helps us banish demons. Like that's how this works. So, yeah, without further ado, I just have these party lights going on. Visual feel for me. My lippies always get the
Use a breather from that to be Really? It's true. This is going to be graphic depictions of violence, both racial, sexual, and pedophilic. I'm gonna skim on the pedophilia because I'm sure we could all use a breather from that. It exists as an embedded part of our rape culture, as I think we all know. But I think there are some interesting intersections that need to be examined in more detail, and I found a piece of work that it truly illuminates the things that I would like to highlight in our culture. These are late well, I'll probably have more to say afterwards. Hopefully I've warned you enough, and now 15 minutes and you have potentially even just grown bored waiting. And now I'm gonna get started. Okay. John couldn't have been happier. He just spent a wonderful time with his family at the beach.
Oh, no.
It was these bonding moments that made life worth living. They had just foreclosed on a new, bigger house due to the new position at work that came with a substantial raise. There is nothing better than being the breadwinner and supplying your family with everything they need. Yes, life was good. As they walked down the path towards their car, my youngest daughter saw an ice cream shop. She looked up at me with those large blue eyes and with pleading look said, "Daddy, could we get some ice cream? It has been such a wonderful day, and it is hot, and it would." I held up my hand to stop her in mid-sentence. It was always hard to refuse, Daisy. Sure, she was growing up. At 12, her hips were starting to fill out, and the development of breasts was not far away. She had a light tan that only accentuated her preteen body, but she still held that innocence of a child. I wanted her to hang on to that for as long as possible. I gave her a big grin, held her up by the shoulder, and replied, "Sure, honey, I don't see why not. It's been a while since we had some." Sorry, held her by the shoulder, not held her up by the shoulder. I looked over to my wife to get some assurance. Her eyes sparkled, and she gave me a knowing nod. Our eyes locked as we relayed information to each other that only a husband and wife could do. After all these years, Gloria was still a stunning beauty. With a knockout figure and long loose curls of light brown hair, she still could make my heart beat faster. It was very evident where my two daughters got their beauty from. Daisy shared her mother's hair, but my oldest daughter had straight, long blonde hair that wear like strands of silk. I looked over at Chastity. She was a typical 16-year-old. Somewhat sulky and looking not at all that impressed to be out with the family. She stood there with her arms crossed and leaning slightly to one side. Her body language screamed that she wanted to go and wanted to go now. Family outings were no longer a priority in her life. Like most 16-year-olds, she really wanted to be at the mall hanging with her friends. She had spent most of the time lying on the beach trying to get a killer tan, or so she put it. With sunglasses on and lying on a beach towel, she arranged more than one look. Or she attracted more than one look.
Arranged,
not
did
only
she?
from boys her own age, but older guys too. I had to admit, with her
Was
perky
she
dress,
asking for
long,
it?
lean legs, and slim waist, I could see what they saw in her. But I am her father, and I can only see her as my loving daughter.
Is that
Honey,
right?
come on, it won't kill you to have one ice cream. You may even like it. Ha ha ha, as I gave her a wry smile. Without a word, she marched by me, giving me a look of defiance, and then disappeared into the store. Daisy grabbed my hand and pulled me into the store. My wife followed behind. I could have sworn I heard a little snicker. The store itself was a little off the beaten path. Not wanting to pay exorbitant parking fees, I was forced to park a little further down, which turned out to be a little more than further down than I would have liked. Oh my god.
Santa Monica Dad.
I swear to God, AI wrote this. The windows and doors had shades over them to keep out the heat. When we entered, the room was cool but also dim. There was not a lot of people in it. Another mother and daughter and an overweight gentleman with a suit on, but the jacket slung over the back of the chair. Behind the counter was an elderly Asian fellow. He smiled at us as we came in. I think he was just happy to see new people. By the sad shape of the place, I'd imagine he didn't see too many customers. Daisy ran up to the glass over let you see all the flavors of ice cream.
I really had such a hard time with this.
I was a little more methodical.
I really could not, do this ice cream entry scene with any sincerity.
Daisy what she wanted when there was a loud crash as someone forced their way through the front door. The woman in the corner screamed, and as I turned around, I saw her clutching her 6-year-old daughter to her chest. The fat man's eyes were wide, and he carried an expression of shock. As I continued around, just behind my wife and daughter, 4 men came in brandishing guns with nylons over their faces. Even with the nylons, it was pretty easy to tell that all 4 were African American. The first one yelled, "Everyone, don't move." Gloria and Chastity, I don't think, could have moved. They seemed cemented in place. Oh, sorry, he wrote, "the seemed cemented in place." The 4 thieves spread out into the room, swinging their weapons back and forth in a menacing way. These were not young punks going out for the first time. These guys had done this before. Sorry, I not to be all Gotham about this one. On the ground, fuckers. And that means you too, Jackie Chan. As he pointed his gun directly at the old Asian fellow. Nobody doubted his sincerity, and in unison we all dropped to the ground. I heard both my girls whimpering. Gloria said softly to Chastity, "Shh, sweetie, it'll all be over soon." "Daddy, what's going on?" I heard Daisy say behind me. One of the thieves kicked me in the side and growled, "Tell her to shut the fuck up." "Just be quiet, Daisy. They just want money. They are going to leave." Daisy grew silent. I guess she was starting to understand the gravity of the situation. I love how many times we were telling the little girl to just shut the fuck up. The one thief walked around the counter and you could hear him opening the cash register. The other 3 were slowly pacing the room. I imagine that they had their guns trained on us. One of the 3 said to no one in a very calm voice, "That's right, nobody needs to be a hero. Nobody will get hurt." It was then that you heard the cash box being thrown to the ground. "This is it. This is fucking it. Hey, old man, where's your money?" Through broken English, all you could hear the old man say, "That's all, that's all." "Fuck, fuck, fuck," the apparent leader slammed his hand on the counter. You heard shuffling and a slight pause. Then the old man gave one painful howl. I think the leader kicked him. "How much?" one of the lackeys asked. 30 fucking bucks.
Oops, I was supposed to fucking...
I was supposed to meet a lot of this.
I was for sincerity there, in like growing as a voice actor, and this is the first time I've ever had a like slur out loud on purpose. One time I carabiner was trying to shorten it and be cute, and that came out of my mouth on accident, and that made me feel really shitty. But you know, there was this like time period in my childhood where a lot of the people around me were like practicing slurs, and I was just like, oh my god, I can't do that. I read To Kill a Mockingbird and it moved me. Like, I can't. My literature teachers tried to make me read stuff and I listened. Like, I don't know.
That was good.
So I was not, I guess I'm gonna have to go over this again, but I suppose this is the contextualization part. I was trying to push myself in the reading of this because I think it's important for the visceral quality of it to come through, and I'm going to continue recording it. But one thing I learned about my latent biases, if I do allow slurs to come out, is that it's a lot easier for Asian slurs to come out than it is for Black slurs, and that is a quality of racism under colonialism, and especially aversive racism, where almost everyone feels it to be more acceptable to act in pejorative or demeaning manners towards our Asian community members than it would be for Black and Indigenous folk. And the reality is that the types of racism that our Asian friends face is different, but no less violent. So
form of
it's just
erasure.
Insidious sort of permissiveness, and I just want to call it out and say that I'm sorry, this sucked to read, it sucked to say, and I will not be saying slurs ever again. I fucking, like, well, Jesus Christ, actors that do it, right? That's half of my gearing myself up every time I come to do this. I'm just like, it's a tiny show. You have to like admire actors and understand how they do their work and their methodology, and then try to embody those processes, and then we leave, you know. Like that's how I talk to myself. So yeah, I guess I'll be re-listening to this around the 23rd mark to properly censor. But thank you for letting me pause here. And maybe it's important that we take a little bit of a breather in this storytelling, right? All right.
He had a whole mattress full of money. There was
there's some
an
more
uncomfortable silence. The leader...
There's some more Asian racism.
Oh.
He has a whole mattress full of money, I bet. They're always hiding that money.
He had
just like
a
the
whole
Jews.
mattress full of money.
How menacing.
There was an uncomfortable silence. The leader was thinking, everybody sit up now. Sorry.
Stand up.
Was thinking, everybody sit up now. Like puppets, we all sat up.
Better.
Having a new connection, we all looked at each other. All I saw was terror in everyone's eyes. The leader looked at each of us. Other than the fat guy, we were all in bathing suits. I had a pouch that carried a little money, my wallet, and car keys. The leader saw the futility. He pointed his gun first at me and then the fat guy. You give me that pouch, you empty your pockets. Oh yeah, it was a direct, like, you do this, you do that. My bad. I unhitched my pouch and handed it over. I saw the fat man nervously fumble around his clothes, extracting everything and putting it on the floor beside him. The watch too, fat man. With a quickness that belied his chubby little hands, he had the watch off almost before the leader had finished his sentence. He surveyed his pickings and did not look impressed. Jesus, there's not even $100 here. It was hardly worth our time to come here. He looked at each of us as though he was contemplating something. You know, boys, if we can't get a payday, I'm going to get something out of this. He looked directly at my wife as he was talking. Both Gloria and I knew exactly what he meant. Gloria looked over at me with pleading eyes. She could see the helplessness in mine. Her expression changed as she accepted her fate. The leader grabbed Gloria by the arm and drew her to a standing position. Not knowing what was happening, Daisy screamed out, "Don't hurt my mom!" He looked over at Daisy with a Cheshire Cat-like grin. "Don't worry, little girl, I won't hurt your mommy." He turned his attention back on me. "Hey, fucker, I thought I told you to keep her quiet." I looked back at Daisy, put a finger to my lips, and motioned for her to be quiet. She slumped back and remained quiet. I looked back to Gloria. The big brute had her at arm's length and was looking at her up and down. "What do you say, fellas? We got shit on this job, but I think we can take it out in trade. This little white chick is some piece of me. I bet she can... I bet she has...
Oh.
I fucking hate... I've never said that before in my life. I hated doing that. But because I said the C one, I've never said these out loud. I hate it.
Yeah. Hey, I caught it this time. Good deal.
The others chuckled.
See how they slip it in there?
One remarked, "Sounds good as long as I get a chance."
Slip it right
Oh,
in.
we are all going to get a chance. Gloria just stood there, expressionless. The leader looked at her and said, "Look, bitch, I'm gonna fuck you no matter what. If you just want to lie there, I really don't give a shit, but you might as well enjoy it too." One of the gangsters took up a position at her...
Honestly, fairly convincing.
He meant to write the door, but he was getting excited. Then we heard the ominous click of the door being locked. As the door was being locked, another gangster turned the sign over to say it was closed. There was no hope of being rescued. We just had to play along. Gloria had a cute blue two-piece bathing suit on. The leader tore off his nylon mask and leered. I think that was supposed to... Yeah. Leered at Gloria. He undid his hand and forced her back onto one of the tables.
I found that
He
transition
undid her top and
really
reduced
difficult.
Her supple tits. He kneaded them in his hands and forced her back onto one of the tables. Without a struggle, Gloria positioned herself on the table. The leader took his rough hands and almost tore the bikini bottoms right off of Gloria. He continued to touch her breasts, then leaned over and took one of her nipples in his mouth, is what he meant to write. He suckled on it for a while and then changed it.
But they said her mouth.
Interesting that they wrote her mouth, though. Gloria gave an involuntary shudder, her eyes closed. I think she was retreating to a place that wasn't a rape. After a few minutes of administering to her tits, he lightly bit one of her nipples. This is pretty much what counted for foreplay when this was written. Like, this takes so much concentration to read out loud. Gloria gave out a small squeal that suspiciously didn't sound like pain. He brought his hand down to Gloria's cunt. He started rubbing her clit with his fingers, then inserted them into her vagina. Holy fuck, boys, this chick is fucking turned on. She's wetter than hell. I guess she can't wait to have my black cock pounding her juicy cunt. While he kept rubbing my wife's clit and playing with her hole, he took his other hand and undid his pants and let them fall to the ground. Out popped a thick 10-inch cock. All I could think of was how I couldn't compete with that. I looked at both of my daughters. They both looked like they were going to cry, but oddly couldn't look away. Just mesmerized, you know. It was then that he placed the tip of his cock at the entrance of my wife's pussy. Multiple wives here. It's very the mistakes in this are so interesting. Even so slowly he pushed, because it's so well written. Like the way that it has mistakes is almost more obvious because of how well written this little piece is. Ever so slowly, he pushed it in until he had it jammed to the hilt. He had the look of rapture, his eyes closed and his head thrown back. Oh yeah, fuck yeah, your pussy feels so good. He started to pump his massive meat in and out of my wife's pussy. Gloria's breathing started to become ragged. She looked at the man who was fucking her. Their eyes met, and between thrusts she managed to get out, "Please don't come in me. I'm not on the pill." His only answer was an evil smile. He started to bring the tempo of his fucking faster and faster. You could see the glistening of my wife's juices all over his black cock every time he pulled out. He grabbed my wife's hips, and on each thrust in, he would pull back, trying to impale her on his 10-inch monster. Gloria grabbed her rapist's forearm and dug her fingernails into them. Her eyes closed, her face flushed, and her breathing matching every thrust. He fucked faster and faster. He was groaning. Every once in a while, he would mutter, "Oh yeah, fuck yeah." Suddenly, Gloria's eyes snapped open and looked at me. Her eyes, half shut, bored into my soul. She mouthed words, "I'm sorry," and with that she screamed out. Her body lurched in a spasm, and she experienced an earth-shattering orgasm. Just at that moment, he gave a final push into her cunt, and you could see his cock swelling as he dumped all of his cum into my wife's fertile womb. There was sweat on both of their bodies, and as they parted, they both relaxed noticeably. My wife's eyes remained closed, and she remained that way until her breathing came back to normal. The boss took a step back, pulled his pants up, looked at his friends, and said, "Fuck, was that good? She fucks like a demon." He looked at me and smiled. "She's fucking ruined now. All she is gonna want is black cock from now on. And just think, in 9 months' time, you'll be looking after my baby." He gave a rapid, laugh. Gloria lay there with her legs open, waiting for the next guy. I looked around to see who was going to be next. That is when I noticed that they all had taken off their nylon masks. The leader looked around. "Who's next?" A bigger fellow stepped forward and handed his gun over. He first looked at my wife with her legs spread open, awaiting the next guy. He stopped, looked about the room, and his gaze fell upon Chastity. "You know what? I feel like some young pussy." He leaned over and roughly brought Chastity to a standing position. She shook in her grasp. Oops, I think he meant his again. Or did she mean? Sorry. She shook in his grasp. Gloria looked over and, pleading, "No, please no, she's only 16. Come over here and fuck me instead. Let me have your baby." The big guy chuckled. "Why the fuck would I want your fucking used up old cunt when I have this fresh little one? I won't get many opportunities to fuck a teenage white girl." I spoke up. "Please, we'll do anything. What do you want? I'll get you money. Please don't do this. There ain't nothing I want from you. You're just gonna have to watch me fuck your sweet girl's pussy. If she's anything like mommy, I'll have her coming in no time." He pushed her back to the table. Okay, I'm not gonna do this. Yeah, I gotta stop. It's too much. Needless to say, Yeah. It really is too much. I mean, I know I keep harping on the way women's reproductive rights are used as a means of ensuring a lack of class solidarity between people of color and white women. But oh my god, this is fucking why. This is a huge I can't. The gangbang, I'm sure you can see where this is going, and all the scary black men fuck the innocence out of the white girl, and then at the very end, daddy gets to fuck his 12-year-old daughter, which is apparently what he always wanted. It's truly disgusting, and I'm not going to subject you to a full reading. Mostly because I can't. I don't think I can continue reading that. I could get through the first little bit because I can vibe with cuckoldry. I can get into impregnation fetish. I can understand race play. I you know, like there are themes. There are enough themes in this opening bit that I can be like, okay, I can kind of suspend my least favorite parts and understand this within the context of what it is. Still don't like many of these parts, but I understand it as like us being human beings. But after that, that's when I'm just like, nope, this is monstrous shit. I can't do it. And I wish I could analyze this better for you, like from a literary perspective. Because really, it's so formulaically perfect as far as stereotypes. Like I don't want to say stereotypes. I don't want to use like a science word when I don't mean this in a science way. But like this scene, what's going on in this scene here is that Asian men are pathetic unless they are useful. Propaganda, right, yes. So this is just like straight up erotica propaganda. But erotica is a really powerful form of like moving people. I know I've mentioned before that it's my favorite form of porn, so obviously I'm gonna start out by analyzing some of the worst shit you've ever heard. But when it's written well, it can be very evocative. It can be very vivid. It can when you force your reader to, or not force, but entice. When you entice your reader, coercion. Yeah, I mean, I do have a coercion kink a little bit, but it's more about, never mind.
We're neither attempting to kink shame me or force my kinks on you.
I mean, trying not to. When you entice your reader to vividly imagine something through the sheer poetry of your words, that's a power. And so you're seeing this ultra powerful yet, and having everything in the world, and having just like the most beautiful family and wife and life, and they're on the beach, and he got a promotion, and they're gonna go get ice cream, and he's just like, you know, world's best dad mug.
He got the American dream, whatever. The picket fence. It's in his yard.
He's got it going on, but at the same time, he's
this
sort
is
of
American
like this
beauty.
Cucked, fellow, right? Like he is almost like circumscribed by his own power and powerlessness, and he's willing to do anything to sink as deeply as possible into the innocence of his children at the expense of his children.
The author is, anyway. And since it's written in an I,
Gary Stew sort of way.
John.
And if that doesn't feel like the average American white man's
Gary
experience of being the average American white man, I don't know what is. So this is pretty fucked up shit, you know? This is violence. And you see these themes, of course, over and over in our porn, everywhere. I started with erotica because it was evocative and easy, but...
And also because of how old this story is.
But I'm sure everyone's noticed the way that the categories work. It's just so formulaically easy to see this relationship that is being built between the animalistic, dangerous, rapist, out of control black man
who probably also does or sell crack, right? Definitely isn't dying in fentanyl epidemics.
The slave trade brought black bodies to plantations and other forms of slave labor in America. Right now it's mostly prisons and all the unpaid labor, all the invisible labor. In the Asian archetype of this story, you see that Asian man, pathetic, unless useless, otherwise better dead. Useful. Domination behavior of the North Pacific Railroad, which was built on the bodies of Chinese men.
And the internment camps.
This is violence.
The intermixing
Propaganda
of
is violence.
Taking all Asians.
Psychological warfare is violent. I'm looking at the end of this. I kind of scrolled to the end of this piece, and
Painting Asians.
one of the last, like, floating all on its own quotation says, "It only feels good with you."
Crack, right? Definitely isn't dying in fentanyl epidemics.
Rapist, out of control black man
who probably also does or sell crack, right? Definitely isn't dying in fentanyl epidemics.
The slave trade brought black bodies to plantations and other forms of slave labor in America. Right now it's mostly prisons and all the unpaid labor, all the invisible labor. In the Asian archetype of this story, you see that Asian man, pathetic, unless useless, otherwise better dead. Domination behavior of the North Pacific Railroad, which was built on the bodies of Chinese men.
And the internment camps.
And the coal mines. This is violence. It is.
The intermixing
Propaganda
of,
is violence.
Taking all Asians.
Psychological warfare is violent. I'm looking at the end of this. I kind of scrolled to the end of this piece, and one of the last, like, floating all on its own quotation says, "It only feels good with you." And of course, my heart is pulled. I want to read the context. Oh, he's in his 12-year-old daughter's con right now. That's great. I needed to read that. Totally gross. Wow.
What the actual fuck?
It only feels good with you. To want to be affirmed so much by your children that you are willing to sacrifice your children. To want to sink so deeply into their innocent love that you will sacrifice that innocent love. That is generational wound. that is generational trauma. And outside of this
pedophilic context,
pedophilic incest erotica, outside of this thing that exists everywhere.
Like the environmentalist
You see
movement.
that same betrayal in the environmentalist movement.
Okay.
That same horror that our fellow man could betray us like that. And of course, one of the parts that's most horrific about this specific thing is how hot that part was when his wife is fucking the gangbang leader, right? Like, that was just genuinely a hot moment. I got into it enough to, like, actually read it, which, you know, and there's parts, like, that's what I'm talking about when I say this is really well written. It's really formulaic, and it's really reinforcing some deeply, deeply negative and problematic ideology surrounding racial categories within the context of systemic oppression and intentional violence,
which has been perpetuated and is
the
being
American people are totally being targeted by
propaganda campaigns designed to keep them from solidarity movements with one another. And the form of erotica is a very powerful one, which I feel confident
and the
that I
only
can
real
highlight.
solution is love, like real love, like willing to heal
care.
generational wounds kind of love.
Solidarity movements are built on care.
And it's not something you do alone, you do this together. Collectivism is hard. Most people experiment with polyamory when they're trying to figure out collectivism. It's quicker.
It's true. I really wish this very first take hadn't been muted. The one with the hoodie. It was the best take. It was only 30 minutes long though. Maybe I wasn't allowed to be that fire. Cool.
To be honest, this isn't the first time I've seen this, probably.
No, I've definitely seen stories like this before. This formulaic erotica.
And I know it's not the first time anybody's written incest, porn, impregnation, pedophilic porn.
Just based on fan fiction I've seen, right?
I know it's a drop in the bucket.
Oh my god. The people... Never mind.
I do think we can talk about these things in a way that doesn't involve continuing to perpetuate cycles of violence.
Which starts with destigmatization.
I've seen examples of it in recovery treatment programs, in the ways that different systems in our communities approach and treat public health concerns.
First responders, first aid, frontline workers.
And that includes social ills. I think one of the most horrific things about colonial violence has been the way that social ills have been treated with pejorative.
Social ills, as far as like addressing it as a public health concern, have always been contextualized in a authoritarian, violent way. Is what I was trying to say.
The social ill, quote, of homosexuality leading to conversion therapy programs and teenagers being kidnapped and tortured and sexually assaulted, definitely. Yeah, I know how many people out there thought, oh, maybe we could just fuck the gay out of them.
I think we all know.
Rape is about violence. It's about domination.
when I say gay, I
about
mean
control.
happy. Like,
It's
let's
about power.
pleasure activism.
But apparently what's even more powerful is having your 12-year-old daughter tell you it only feels good with you after gangbanging around a very large black men, so that's cool. Anywho, if you see themes of this showing up in your life, which I'm sure you will, because this is just systemic colonial oppression in raw dogging form, I know, super not comfortable, but we're here now. Please take a breath, take a breather. I'm a huge fan of touching my own sternum. That really helps. Drink some water. I put salt on my vegetables today. I was told not to do that because it ruins the nutrients, but I figured I had earned some salt. I love salt, personally, and yeah, I got some broccoli and some carrots, and I ate that with some rice, and it was the best thing ever in this world.
It's only like my favorite.
Just one of my favorite
meal.
bowls.
Mm-hmm.
Simple but good.
Yeah.
And let's see, any
You know,
other
I've graduated, actually.
recommendations
It
for
used to be
self-care
rice
after this? Cry.
with
If
ketchup.
you need to cry, I've cried
It was just
so
ketchup and rice
much
for so long in my
preparing
life.
to do this episode.
Ketchup and rice is
like
honestly,
a lot.
I
I have cried thinking about all of the children who have been sexually abused and who are currently being sexually abused, because I know that this is a systemic, endemic problem. It's fucking everywhere, and it's a generational cycle. It's being passed down, and as much as I'm seeing rapid change on this front, thanks to sexual revolutions and destigmatizing and taking shame out of sex and sexual education, I also know that that is a privileged experience that I've had, and that I've seen, and that there are plenty of places in my country and in this world that that's not the case, even in my state and in my neighborhood. So I think it's important to bring these things out into the light and to start talking about them, because really what I see when I look at this is some sophisticated, at the time it was built or at the time it was made, propaganda to reinforce certain types of real life historical violence in a new digital setting. I'm pretty sure this is a 10 or 15-year-old
that's
story.
how you code.
And so I think this is a particularly interesting, deeply devastating document in its own way. When it comes to thinking about how many people have been exposed to this or to things like this, and what it helps them build about their beliefs, about themselves, and about each other in a diverse and ever-changing world. This
Trying to think if I have anything to add. I feel like I've said most of it.
Yeah, I mean, after his daughter is like, it only feels good with you, he's like, I erupted like I've never come before. I felt load after load. I couldn't believe I was capable of coming so hard and so much. It was nirvana. I was in total bliss. I was totally unaware that I was screaming in pleasure. It was like it wasn't even me. that kind of writing is giving any white man reading it permission to fantasize about it by describing the orgasm with such loving detail. This is anything that messes with your coding for any of those 4 F's, right? The feed, the fight, the fuck, the flight. Anything that nudges you to flight, anything that entices you to fuck, anything that reminds you to feed, and anything that eggs you on into a fight. Should be considered pretty carefully. It's hard because I love being egged on. And I think more than anything, that's what parents are trying to teach their children during these developmental years.
Right, like be careful about the ways that these aspects
So when I
of
think
being
about
human are going to be
the people who've read this,
showing up in your
things like
day-to-day
it.
life.
Things on the internet like it, or seen things like it.
Thinking about
At
kids
whatever age they
seeing
saw
stuff
it.
like this.
And I think about how that must have impacted them.
Because I know how it impacted me.
Think about how it impacts me.
These things never stop impacting us. We just grow around them and change, hopefully. I was thinking about this a little bit this morning within the context of porn addiction.
I will share one last thing, just to leave on a happier note here. During my sleuthing for
Oh, this is good. I'll wait.
good erotica, upon which I found this particular piece, I found another one in a more lighthearted way, where our main hero character was, he was a little bit obsessed with the feet of the women that he was sleeping with, and it was interesting.
It was cute, honestly.
The care that was taken in describing the wrinkles on the feet of the eldest woman was truly beautiful.
He took care to describe the feet of all the women. And it felt like you were his fingertip. Isn't that like the writing of it?
And that's one of the things that's so interesting about many of these stories, and especially, I don't know how to categorize them, but there's a certain pattern, and I've seen stories like this.
They're just a certain type of good, a certain
But
formula
one of the themes
of good
that I've noticed is the genuine pieces that shine, really shine. Like the writing is good and it's evocative enough to capture you. There was thought in this, there was care in this.
intention, at least.
Intention went into making it.
Hey. It's like I have some kind of through
And
line.
it took me a long time to figure out what I felt that meant. Or maybe just why the pieces that shine to me really shine to me. I'm like, okay, well, add cuckoldry to my list of interests. I don't know about gangbangs. I
Oh my
know
god, we're not
I
we're
have
not
heard
listening
tell
to
of a
me
woman who
ramble.
did a gangbang for her birthday.
Oh
Like,
my
she was
god.
just having a good time, and
It's true. I heard about
loved
this.
that for her. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Good for you. And I hear stuff like that a lot. I'm always like, oh dang, like people really be going off. I have a lot of friends and experience in the kink community, and history with the kink community in some ways, and their stories. I am always just so pleased.
I love positive kink stories.
Seeing the way that people are positively and safely exploring new horizons and in sexual loving intimacy. So
yeah, it's just the best.
But oh yeah, sorry, I went off into total
misdirect mode because I don't want to talk about how I feel about gangbangs, which is so valid. I don't have to talk about it if I don't want to.
But I'm always wondering, is that the misogyny in me? Because we all have internalized like misogyny and racism and all of these things. Mine is definitely that it's easier for me to say. It's for me to say like the Chinese derogatory or Asian derogatory is to say. See what I mean? Yeah. The whole thing that blew my mind when I was learning about racism was that it's different. Like the flavor of racism is different.
I was trying to say like in a academic way.
But like there's this whole thing about the Asian
minority
stereotypes being about like model minorities or something. Yeah. I don't know. Either way, yeah, like all the negative stereotypes, like, oh, you're sneaking and you're yeah, anyway, never mind. I'm not getting into this. I think we have better ways to spend our time. Yeah, so where was I going with that? Gangbangs. Oh yeah, internalized stuff. I'm always like, is it my internalized misogyny that makes me think I wouldn't like a gangbang? Which is why I think of that woman who just threw one for her birthday. She was like, I feel like getting fucked like a lot. Let's do it up. I was like, dang, that's some liberating sounding stuff right there.
Yeah, my favorite part of that whole story is when the adult woman came. That was the best part.
Internalized misogyny. I'm not sure. I'm always like, well, I'll never know until I try. But I think if it was internalized misogyny, there would be associations of gangbang for me that were like being used and abused, kind of lots of sperm, like just drowning in sperm. And so those are kind of the themes, right? And the general reason that I would see internalized misogyny in that would be that, like, not wanting to feel used because I feel old, and feeling old and used is like one of the least fun feelings. And of course I only feel old because being a 30-year-old woman is basically being dead under a rape culture that enjoys fucking its children. But it's fine. So maybe for my 40th birthday I'll treat myself to a gangbang, just to keep the spirit alive. I don't know. I always plan one decade out, but usually I don't share the plan, so we'll have to see. Anyway, this was a good Gothic episode, I think. I am pleased with how this came out, and I hope that you are too. I hope you stay tuned. We will continue to I don't know, just have these conversations, I guess.
I mean, yeah.
Shed the stigma.
I'm so obsessed with applying harm
what other
reduction
catchphrases
tactics
can I
to psychological, social ills within the context of treating it like a public health crisis. Oh yeah, harm reduction's the best. Too bad there's so much stigma associated with it. Too bad it's so racialized.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of tragic. Like, we really do live in this super Puritan society. Like, American prudishness is just world renowned. And there's this implication or this, like, intentionally reinforced association between purity culture and wealth. And you see that coming up everywhere. But I think there's really no better place to pinpoint and then also have these discussions than porn. And so again, I am going to say that we need to
just the
rally
data
behind sex
that
work.
Pornhub collects about end users is so useful as a
I've got a
thermometer
few,
for where we are
of
with our
the
social
same
struggle.
speeches, and I just say them over and over in new ways.
But we have so much
That's
stigma
that's my
associated
thing.
with it. No
I
one's
am a
using it that way.
rhetorician. I figured if I ever anger people too much, someone's gonna cut my tongue out. That's
Probably.
It's my goth thought for the day.
I think a lot
Really
about it
feels
actually.
very likely sometimes.
Like what that would feel like to just not have a tongue.
To the point where it almost makes me want to do like body modification surgery and get one of those split tongues just to feel a little bit more like
ownership of my own tongue.
I had a friend who did one.
Yeah, I did have a friend do one. I wonder how that's healing.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel good. I feel good that we're talking about this. Because one thing that I think it's really hard for most groups who aren't white men to do is to empathize with the white man. But with this kind of violent reinforcement of generational harm, I also like have to kind of just pity somebody who has to live in these sorts of headspaces, like and not like I pity you, but like I mean,
Kind of.
it sucks. Like that's just awful, and that's that's why a huge amount of people were and are as they're developing kind of turned off by the military, but a lot of people are not. A lot of people are interested in what it means to protect and serve, and what that really means in a national way, in a
yeah, I'm
in a way
sure
that
you're wondering
involves
how we leapt into military culture yet again, because I do that all the time. But besides the whole propaganda aspect of things, which, adds that layer, just automatically, as well as the greater context of warfare and the history of warfare in the human experience, I think I was jumping there because I tend to think, I wanted to recommend anybody who is struggling with porn addiction, because it is a real problem, and it is in my opinion, it is a caused problem, a public health concern that has roots in systemic violence, and so to anyone struggling with that, if it helps to think of yourself as a warrior who is actively resisting that sort of unhealthy indoctrination. I don't know, that helps me. Little keyboard warrior, but for porn. I know that's so silly, but written porn is so good, and there's so much good
erotica out there. So it makes me sad that this is some of the first stuff that hit the global consciousness. Just again, for how old this and other stories like it are. I don't know if you recognize this one, or if you recognize the formula, or if you're just not a big reader of erotica, but I don't know. You know, it comes back to that chicken or the egg, reflection or reality or picture, because a picture and a reflection are opposite things. They show opposite things, so which one are we looking at today? Okay, I'm going to start to transition in a new direction. Dedicating your life to something in a way that involves consistent training, in a way that involves teamwork and camaraderie. I also want to add on, I see all of these themes come up in my books, of course. One of my favorites is Brandon Sanderson's Starless, I think. Starfall. I also want to point out who is not in the room in that ice cream parlor, right? Like, what races, this socially constructed idea of race, what other races are not in the room? The power of Indigenous silence, I think, is such that to put an Indigenous person in this room in order to reinforce the violence done against Indigenous people would actually undermine a desire to reinforce that violence. Yep. And I wanted to jump in one more time and just say that something I've noticed with these types of gangbang situations in which the white men's women are getting fucked by other races unwillingly, coercion, some situationship there, and you absolutely can't have all like representation in the room at the same time. Like, it's really difficult, and you actually watched creators try to add different representations of stereotypes and cutouts and archetypes and all of these things to different scenes. Again, just centering this white male perspective. And like, you can see it. It's so constructed. It's anyone with knowledge of cinematography at this point, of like staging, which every TikTok video maker is now, right, can see the way that these narratives are centering certain things and reinforcing certain types of violence. So it's always really interesting to me when you're analyzing things like this to think about who isn't in the room and what kind of power do they have that, if it was in the room, would dispel the tension or the power that's building, or otherwise change the narrative. The way that violence is perpetuated against Indigenous perspectives and people is about erasure. It's about genocide. It is about killing the Indian and saving the man. Indigenous schools that in Canada persisted into the 70s. Or even the 90s, I think. I'm not the best historian. The light needs to be brought to illuminate these darknesses. Yeah, so I hope that all made sense. Awesome. fiction or reality or picture, because a picture and a reflection are opposite things. They show opposite things. So I think I'm just like babble fishing at this point. But yeah, think about who is not in this ice cream parlor of hatred. And what that says about their power in resisting colonial violence and what we can learn from their strategies in that. If we're not too racist to learn from people. Or really ageist or sexist, like that. Ableist, neurodivergencies, real. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's got stars in it. It's basically a boy and his dragon, but it's a girl in her spaceship. It's great. Her dad is awesome. So if you need some wholesome dad and daughter stories, read Brandon Sanderson. I really enjoyed that. That was really good. And
I'm also really wrecking Kristen Arden's Girl in the Tower series. Cannot wreck that enough. Please check it out. It's another great one if you want a good father-daughter relationship. And I think that because the shadow that bad things cast is so much darker than the bad things themselves. But when those shadows are allowed to overshadow or encompass. I think I got caught up talking about shadows a little too much here at the end. I'm gonna be real.
a light needs to be brought to illuminate the stars.
That part I do agree with. Okay. Now I'm gonna sit here quietly until the 23rd mark. Yeah, I think I captured everything that I was trying to capture. It was hard. I think I censored everything I needed to censor. Honestly, I think the Mexican slur still kind of got away. But I think that one specifically tends to. And I prefer to think of it within the context of human beings really enjoying beans and having a love for bean that surpasses even racism. But that's just the legumes that live in my belly talking, I'm sure. Could you imagine the John in that story being able to handle it?